everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Tour de Cons, your podcast all about conventions across this great land of ours. And maybe one day we'll get an international convention. That would be kind of cool. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Jackson, and today we are taking a walk down that scary side of the street. We're going into the spooky mansions. We're going into the rural roads and looking for danger. That's right. Today is all about horror as we continue our series of episodes talking about Texas Frightmare Weekend happening the first weekend of May here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And joining me today is Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I am great. And yourself?
I am good, and I'm excited about this podcast. Before we hit record, Mike and I just had a wonderful, about 10-minute conversation about podcasting and life, and I know you're going to be a great guest, so that's nice.
I will do my best.
Yeah. So before we get into specifics, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So I currently reside on the East Coast in the District of Columbia, originally from the Midwest, which they don't really have many horror-related conventions there, which is actually a shame. I didn't get into many conventions or love of the genre as I do now until I moved out here, because on the East Coast you have your Monster Manias, your Spooky Empires, and of course your Texas Frightmares, which is back closer to the Midwest, but you just have, once you get in a group of things, you want to actually make the effort to go to the worthwhile conventions. But all my life, I've definitely grown up a horror fan, and I'm sure other fellow listeners have fallen into the same well as I have, as even remember growing up, sneaking down in the middle of the night to turn the TV on to, watch all the scary movies that our parents didn't let us watch, and that's probably how I got my start.
That is
awesome. It's continued to this day, 30 plus years later.
Hey, Mike, what brought you to DC?
DC, just a change of life, just a change of pattern. Grew up in Kansas City and just wanted to make that leap to get a different environment and get a life going out here. It's a very vibrant young professional community with a lot of personal and professional opportunities.
Okay.
And soon as after I moved out here, there was actually a lot of activities and conventions themselves to do.
Well, nice.
So that's another bonus.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a good place to live.
Oh, cool. If I don't mind me asking, what do you do for what do you do for your gig?
For my gig, I'm actually happy to say for DC, I have a nice, boring old gig. In the scheme of things, I crunch numbers.
Oh, okay.
So I do statistics and data research, which I love, but which I can avoid, a lot of the DC questions, so to speak. But I love it. It's great. It suits me well, and I can, I have my own little circles of, fellow geeks like myself. So it's great.
Very nice. So I do have a question that is not on the agenda. There is no right or wrong answer. I just want to ask this question. So as some of you know, I am a major Bruce Springsteen fan. And for those of you who are doing the Tour de Con drinking game, take a drink. Jesse mentioned Bruce. And a couple years ago, he was doing a show in Kansas City. And he opened with the song Kansas City. And my buddy and I said, are people who live in Kansas City, because there was a huge reaction. I mean, everyone just went crazy, and they were clapping and cheering and, just this huge roar of approval. And we looked and said, wouldn't they be beaten down? Like, are they, like, really? How cliche, you're going to do Kansas City? So as a former resident of Kansas City, you want to give me your opinion on that question?
So would they be beaten down for doing a...
Yeah, are you...
Some would say cliche...
Yeah, like, you go, okay. Like, I find it amusing when someone comes to Dallas, Texas and said, hey, where's all the cowboy hats? Yeah, that's kind of the movies. Fort Worth a little bit more. I mean, yeah, we're just, you're more likely to see a baseball cap than you are a cowboy hat in Dallas, Texas. So I didn't know
Right. It's the
if
cliche
yes.
question.
So is someone playing "I'm going to Kansas City, here I come"? Does as a former resident, were you beaten down by the song, or if anyone you were a fan of played it, you'd be like, all right.
You know what? I would actually be the crowd jumping up and down and cheering and going all out for it because I would take that as a sign of love and kind of admiration. Now, some people might find it cliche, but I think it's actually pretty great. He's showing, in my view, he's showing respect, or not respect, but he's just showing admiration for the fans and letting them go, wow. That's how I would take it.
Oh,
Now I
good.
do being out on the East Coast, the questions I do get from peers and colleagues is, what does Kansas City have? Just pretty much Dorothy the Wizard of Oz, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's to me, that's your more cliche. Like, okay, that was funny the first 100 times, but after a while, do have more than that. But no, back to Bruce Springsteen. I think it's great. I mean, if I was there at that show, I probably would have been rocking with the rest of them.
Well, very nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. It, I was in Louisville, Kentucky years ago, and I was there for a vendor. I was at the time, well, I still am in technical support, but at the time it was with third party PC repair.
Uh huh.
And um, I asked the customer, I said, so, like, Texas is known for Tex-Mex, Texas barbecue.
Oh, sure,
What are you known for here in Kentucky? Bourbon. And I said,
bourbon.
okay, yep, I guess so. That is a good thing to know for. Well, very
Uh
nice. Well,
huh.
I am glad you're able to crunch numbers and live in DC. I guess there's a huge population in DC that has nothing to do with the politicals. They just keep things going, keep the city rolling as normal.
That is true. I mean, contrary to, just, media or TV, there's actually a lot of us that, yeah, we go to our jobs and we do our thing and we avoid the whole landscape. So it's great.
Yeah,
I've been here over 7 years and it's been great to me. And I've definitely, there definitely is a nice little niche horror community out here as well. You have to look a little bit to find it, but there's out here any crowd or interest you want is definitely here. So it's great. It's a
yeah,
great place
and
to be.
I think one of the beautiful things, and we're going to talk about your horror origin story, but um, I grew up. I'm 58, and I grew up there. Back in the old days, which you didn't have
Back
the
in the old
internet.
days.
Yeah, yeah, you didn't have. It
No.
was tougher to find like communities. You may run into somebody at the local store that's looking at the comic spinner rack the way you are, and you went, "Oh, a kindred spirit," or someone who's going to the movies and it's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I like horror movies too." So it's much easier now to kind of find us as a good example. You're living in D.C., I'm living in Dallas, and with a few, strokes of a Facebook page, I'm like, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to talk horror." Oh, I'd be interested. So
Oh,
that
sure. Yes.
makes it so much easier for all of us.
Hmm.
Well, okay. Talk to me. Tell me your origin story. Talk about, you said you already shared, and I smiled, creeping downstairs to turn on the TV very quietly to, see the midnight movie. But talk to me of other things. Tell me, do you have a gateway drug or TV show or movie that got you
I,
into this?
I'm trying to think of some unique ones or unique memories that, a lot of the fellow listeners could relate to, but might not have heard at all. Because I mean, I could say the usuals, like Tales from the Crypt, and there was a show called Monsters in the '80s that only lasted, I think, a couple seasons, but I grew up on that. Just the Friday the 13th, the Freddy's, when your classic '80s fare. And so to date myself, I'm 35. So, but I grew up. So the '90s was more of my, coming of age period. All the night with all the '90s, uh, I guess slasher films when Scream reinvented that in the mid '90s. and but as a younger child, I grew up on all the classic '80s fare. But a gateway drug, I don't really know if I have one. I think I just always had a love for it. One of my earlier memories, and maybe other people can remember this as well, or maybe you can. I was a huge wrestling fan growing up. Back when it was WWF and not WWE, and they had WCW, two
Yes.
competing companies. And there was one event I can remember. So back when Bride of Chucky came out, this would have been in '98. The first, pretty much the one that, in my opinion, kind of restarted the whole Chucky franchise because there was a huge delay from Child's Play 3 to Bride of Chucky, and it kind of, in my opinion, that kind of jump started the franchise to what it is now. There was one of I forgot if it was WCW or WWF or WWE, but one of them there was a couple weeks where you heard a sinister laugh, like for 2 or 3 weeks, over the intercom, and everybody thought it was promoting some new wrestler, new event. All I heard was a sinister laugh, some voice saying they were going to make their presence known. And then right when the new Chucky movie came out, they had the sinister laugh come on the air again, and then the camera panned down to actual Chucky himself, pretty much promoting his own movie. So I mean, I just remember there was even back way before social media and back in the '90s, there was definitely some tie-ins with horror movies to other popular mediums just to help get the word out. So I definitely remember that event, thinking that was at the time two of my loves, wrestling and horror. I just somehow they tied those together, which was great. But to go back to your original question, I don't know if there's any one specific incident. I just always remember loving the Halloween season, and I grew up on the classic '80s fairs, so maybe that's your answer. Just
No, I
getting
think
introduced to your classic Freddy's and Jasons
yeah.
and your Leatherfaces. So sounds cliche, but I think that's might have where I got my start.
I don't think that's cliche as all. And it makes a lot of sense that that you're where you came from, what you're doing. That's pretty slick. And I I did love um, back in the day. My son was especially a big WCW and then WWF fan, and
Uh-huh.
we like when he was 10 or 11, we went down to Houston for WrestleMania when Stone Austin turned heel, and
Oh, sure.
we had the best time. That so yeah, they've always done a great job of marketing themselves and doing tie-in marketings. So
And if you
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, and if you think about it, at that time you had the Attitude Era for WWE, and of course WCW is doing their own stuff. You couldn't get away with now, of course. So if they're going to tie in whether it's horror movies or something else, it made sense you could get away with that back then versus the more or less the sanitized landscape. Well, just speaking of wrestling specifically, it is nowadays. But yeah, 20-ish years ago, if you're going to tie in, a famous horror villain or whatever it is, it made sense. You could actually do that, and it got people excited and probably got more fans on board. So it was a win-win. I mean,
Yeah,
looking back, that's how I look at it. I mean, at the time, perspective is, always relevant. But looking
yeah.
back, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I think it did totally. Um, so do you have a favorite genre? Do you, vampires, zombies, the macabre, general, what do you have your go-to that, like, time travel is one of my favorite science fiction, genres. I'm a sucker for almost anything time travel, not just Doctor Who, but, I grew up on Time Tunnel and all these different, you know, different time travel books and movies. So, how about you for genre? Is there one that's a favorite of yours?
I do like time travel now that you say that, and I can't at the top of my head think of any specific time travel horror movies necessarily, but time travel in general. if they do it right, can be really, just psychological and just mind bending. But I mean, it's one of your favorites, so you know as well as I do that time travel can be hard to get right. Meaning just,
Yeah.
the rules that the
Yeah.
movie lays out for itself and abiding by those. But I mean, as far as, just horror genre, I think I'm going to have to say just I guess I like the classics, your classic, hack and slash, your classic, slasher films. When Scream came out in the 90s, you know, that blew my mind. I thought Scream had a perfect balance of, being scary, being a nice slasher movie, of course, being the classic whodunit, made you guess who the killers were, and also very self-aware. I thought when I first saw that when it came out, I believe around 95, 96, I thought that it had the perfect balance of just all the elements of a great horror film. And I think I'll say the Scream series overall did a great job, but the first one, of course, because the first iteration of a series is always fresh and new. You don't know what to expect. So I think I think Craven hit it out of the park. In my opinion, I just hit all the right notes at the right time. So yeah, I'm definitely your slasher fan. Zombies, you know what, your fans might yell at me for this one, but I've actually not really seen much of The Walking Dead. I'm a horror fan, but I never really got into that. The new zombies, not so much. I don't know what it is. I think I'm more of your slasher killer running around and just, getting people. You have your classic 80s flicks like Graduation Day. Those are, super cheesy looking back at them, but they're also just entertaining. They're made on a micro budget, and 30 years later, I can't remember half of the actors, actresses in them, but they're just entertaining movies. They're slasher movies, and you might have a backdrop, whether it's, prom night or graduation day, or, random kids go off into the woods, which, could be a million of them. There's a movie called The Burning, which I thought was great. They came out about the same time as the first Friday the 13th, and I don't remember, I couldn't tell you who started it, but that was just, I thought it was excellent, and I still watch those to this day.
No,
So yeah, that's definitely my subfield.
I think that is a great point. Because that basic um, kind of, you know, the terror is something that's pretty interesting and consistent. And I do think that I was lucky enough to be at Dragon Con this last year and on a couple of Walking Dead panels, and we discussed, you know, how it has become so mainstream, and I do think that has helped, as did, um, people, like iZombie, and where there's different genres of the zombie able to do a little bit, show things a little different. But yeah, there's certainly, the basic people in trouble kind of, is a great go-to. I do think time after time, the Jack the Ripper H.G. Wells that came out in '79 is a pretty decent suspenseful time travel movie, and not quite as horror as it could be, but it's certainly with the themes of a serial killer.
Sure.
Yeah, pretty decent movie.
Uh-huh.
Just
Right.
because we
And
mentioned that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, yeah, and don't get me wrong, I definitely the original Dawn of the Dead, the Romeros. I mean, I'm definitely a huge Romero fan, and I am not. I mean, zombie movies are great. But I think I didn't think about this before, but when you said about your basic slasher film, you just have, it just tries to encompass just your general terror that people are feeling and running from. Usually, it's an unknown entity until, of course, you have the survivor at the end of the movie finally comes face to face. But I think that's what, at least to me, and I don't, maybe I'll speak for others, but I think that's what the general appeal is. You have people in a setting, no matter what it is, and usually they're, from the main character's perspective, they don't see who or what's, killing their friends or or their group or whomever until the very end. So the whole movie, they just have this sense of dread, and to me, that's just the appealing about it. There, I mean, in any setting, there's a movie I remember watching just a few weeks ago on Hulu or Amazon Prime, one of the two, and it was called Intruder, and it's from the late '80s, and the movie takes place in a grocery store at night. Like it takes place after hours, and you have these these clerks and workers stocking shelves, and you have you have an unknown entity from their an unknown person from their perspective, and the audience too. It's definitely a whodunit or a mystery movie about who the killer is, going around terrorizing all these teens, and lo and behold, of course, not to spoil it for people who are listening, but you find out who it is and the motive. But it takes place after hours in a grocery store. It's as basic as it can be, but it just works because you still get that sense of dread and terror that just encompasses this that your basic slasher film. Which again, to me, I think that's the appeal.
What's your thoughts on Josh Whedon's Cabin in the Woods?
The first time I saw Cabin in the Woods, I thought because I didn't know anything about it. I went into it thinking it was just an actual straightforward horror movie.
Yeah.
So and other people may have read up on it, they may not have, but I just remember when I first went into it thinking it was going to be just a straight up horror movie. So of course, once the plot unraveled and you figured out what was actually going on, I actually was thinking it was, oh my gosh, why did they do that? That was the biggest cop out. I hated it just when I walked out of the theater because I didn't expect that. And again, I think that's the whole point is if they try to pull the rug out from underneath you to actually trip you up and surprise you with the true motive. So when I went back to watch the second time when it came out on DVD, I actually had a new appreciation for it. And how long ago did Cabin in the Woods come out? Do you remember?
How long ago was 2012? Yeah,
2012. So 5-6 years ago. It's related to this. The problem with movies nowadays is social media trailers spoil everything. I try not to watch trailers if I can help it. Just
right.
Whether it's horror movies or anything, they give away so many scenes. So I'm just trying to think back to 2012 if the trailers that came out for it, if they actually kept all the surprises a secret, or if they marketed it as just straightforward. So maybe people have different expectations. I really don't remember, but looking back, I have a new appreciation for it.
Yeah, I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Josh Whedon, just Angel and his other work. And I was impressed by the cleverness of it, and the whole, just the kind of underneath, the underneath kind of this whole reason why they're doing this. So yeah, it was very nice to kind of see and hear and kind of clever, but I could certainly understand your point if you're going in thinking, okay, here will be a really, interesting new take of, this horror. So it'll be clever because, of course, Josh Whedon's writing it. But then when you get this whole, people in a lab and this whole discussion and everything, it's very different and a very downbeat ending, not to give spoilers, but it's it's
sorry everyone.
Yes, well, I didn't give specifics, but yes.
Sure.
Very cool. All right, so talk to me. Have you attended Texas Frightmare Weekend in the past?
I have. This is actually only going to be my second one.
Nothing wrong with that.
My second one, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yourself, and you've been how many of you attended?
So this will be my first. I have been
Your
lot
first.
of different, even though it's in Dallas, and
Okay.
every year I go, wow, I should have gone there. And so this year when I got a chance to attend, I'm like, okay, I'm going all in. And so this is a good time to remind everyone we're talking about Texas Frightmare Weekend. It's coming up May 4th, 5th, and 6th here in Dallas, Texas. It's going to be at the Hyatt Regency at the DFW Airport. You can go to the Texas Frightmare Weekend website and to get ticket information, and we are about to talk about some of the guests. But so did you go to last year's, or had you been to a previous one?
So the one I went to was 2016. That was 2 years ago.
Okay.
And yeah, it's I mean, of course, I'm coming back, so so no surprise. I had a terrific time. I had a great time. I mean, everyone, I mean, the staff, the guests. I think it's a very, very well run convention. Probably one of the better ones that I've been able to attend.
I have heard that
You
from a
know,
lot of my people that I've interviewed. My good friend Ken Schaefer, who was my very first guest, we talked about this. He, has gone almost, multiple years and is a big fan of B movies by far. If they spend over 10 grand on it, it's too extravagant. He just loves these kind of um, filming on a shoestring, movies. And, he talked about how much he's enjoyed the shows, and not just the big celebrities, but the behind the scenes people. And also, the other guests are just enjoyable to talk about and kind of share some memories with. Um, so
I
talk
mean,
to me. Yeah,
I can definitely concur with Tim completely.
yeah.
I mean, and so it's a little. I think I mentioned this earlier. A little more context. Yeah, I've definitely been to a few. So Monster Manias. Folks want to where those. Monster Manias are in the Baltimore area. You have your Spooky Empires. It takes place in Florida. Monster Palooza, which is in California, which is actually, I believe, is this upcoming weekend. And they're all. And I've been lucky enough to attend at least one show for all those, and they're all good shows. Like every show, people have their different experiences, and I'm not here to badmouth any other show. They're all great conventions, and some people, like some aspects more than others when it comes to, how they're run. But I'll say, all those conventions are great. I definitely don't want to, downplay any of them. I just think, just overall, Texas Frightmare just, hits your well-rounded beats to what people enjoy. Meaning you have, you don't just have your guests or your celebs in a room, and then you get your, in your vendor room, and then that's it. You actually have activities, as you said. Your friend, he's a big fan of B movies, so they have some screenings, some B movie screenings and other, maybe newer screenings as well. So you have movie screenings to go to. Then you have your after parties that anybody can attend. Of course, you have a VIP party on Saturday, but there's also karaoke going on concurrently, as well as a dance party or DJ party the night before. And it just helps add to that, intimate atmosphere of, if you just want to get autographs and memorabilia, you can do that. If you want to meet other, congoers, you can do that as well. And not to say you can't do that at other conventions too. To me, it just seems like the logistics and location and, how Texas Frightmare is run, everything just fits. And I'm not, getting ahead of ourselves,
No.
a
I
favorite
think
memory.
that's perfect. Yeah, please talk to me about some of your favorite memories, and then we're going to talk about this, what you're looking forward to see this year.
Sure. So, and the reason I'm coming back, of course, coming back because I'm super excited to meet a lot of the guests. But a favorite memory from the one I went to was, as I mentioned, you have, karaoke going on after hours on Saturday night that people can socialize and mingle with. And, David Arquette, he was a guest 2 years ago. I remember him going up on stage and just, taking the microphone and just, after a few drinks, just going crazy and singing up on stage, and people went on stage to join, and just nobody took anything seriously. I mean, it was just, everybody was just letting loose, and it was a great time. Nobody, he had probably one of the main draws from that convention, just socializing with everyone like it was no big deal. I mean, you don't get that kind of, intimacy opportunities. I don't think with other conventions. Sometimes, they keep the guests separated, or they just don't come out at all, which is, it just depends on who it is. But he just was able to capture that, those random moments. And since you have those parties set up, you just have opportunity for that. Also, during the day, I remember when people were outside, smoking or taking a smoke break in front of the doors. I remember Lance Henriksen. He was another guest that year. He was just on the bench, just chatting away with a couple people. Nobody was coming up and getting too crazy in his face and going too wild. Just people are around, just having a normal conversation like it was nothing. And when he went inside, I actually followed him in and mustered up the courage to bug him to ask him a question about Super Mario Brothers, because the movie, if fans remember, he played the king at the end of the movie for 10 seconds on screen when he gets back to himself. I just wanted to ask him how he was, what made him, choose to play the role, or how did he, for a cameo role, how did it come about? And I didn't want to bug him. I mean, you could probably sense that, but he just acted like it was no big deal and chatted for 5 minutes and went on his way. And then I ended up getting an autograph from him. Wasn't planning to, but I was just thinking, man, this guy's just so down to earth and just approachable. And it's just little things, I think, that make a convention great for people, is you just see random things occurring, whether it's one of the stars doing karaoke with, the rest of us, mere mortals, or just being able to bug one of the guests, walking back to his table. And I don't think other conventions have as many of those opportunities just logistically as Texas Frightmare does. That whole, intimate atmosphere.
That is such a great story, because that's what we want. We understand this. I have gone to some conventions where they, if you aren't buying an autograph, you aren't even allowed to go to the person's, booth.
Right.
Yeah,
and you get that sense from them too. You get that sense from their eyes. Just you're coming over to say hi to me, or what do you really want? And if you don't get anything, they just don't want to bother with you. And I just, you get that everywhere, and it's the nature of the beast when you frequent a lot of conventions. But the one time I was at Frightmare, I just didn't really get that sense from the celebs there.
Yeah, and I do agree. That's and I certainly think you have to understand that people are there, and that the way conventions work is they guarantee each of the celebrities a certain amount of money for coming, and if they don't cover that in autographs or picture sales, the convention has to pay the difference. And so you certainly can understand them if you just want to talk. But the whole idea is, I may only have enough money to get one autograph, or maybe none, but I want to be able to stand there and tell Steven Weber, I loved you in Studio 60 at the Sunset Strip, or you were wonderful, right, and I loved you in Wings, or and so I think that's you find the middle ground. You make sure that you, as a guest, are courteous, and you don't totally not manipulate, totally take all the time. You go there, you say your thing, and then you get your moment, you move on, and it's kind of great. And then sometimes you do see, them in the wild, and be cool, act, and just enjoy the discussion and the talk. Yeah.
No, I completely agree, and it's funny. I've been going. My first convention was 5.5 years ago, out in the Virginia Beach area. It was a great con called Blood at the Beach. They had a few of them. Unfortunately, it's not around anymore. But I would, since the last 5.5 years since that one, what I would probably say, a third of all of my signings or memorabilia has probably been from folks I wasn't planning on getting, but just because, whether it was passing them in the hallway or going up to them at the table and just, like you said, telling them how much they loved your work, and they were actually very appreciative of that, and they wanted to talk to you and not just, giving you the look like, okay, buy something or leave. I mean, the people that actually enjoy being there, you get a sense that they're, enjoying life. So in a way, it makes you actually, convert, or ironically, or whatever the word is, it makes you actually want to get something from them because you don't feel like you're being pressured. And I wish, not everybody thinks that way, but you almost think if more people, thought that way, they'd probably make a little more business. But
Yeah.
again, it is what it is. But I would definitely say I have a lot of merchandise over the years that I wasn't planning on getting, but once you, talk to someone or see them or just want to go up to their table and tell them you loved them and a role they were in and they were courteous back, thinking, wow, this person's actually great to talk to. Let me, I'll pay for a selfie or for
Yeah.
a picture or for an autograph. I mean, but
Absolutely.
sometimes those are the best surprises to have.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about it. Once again, Texas Frightmare Weekend, May 4th, 5th, and 6th, the Hyatt Regency DFW Airport. So, who are you excited about seeing, Mike?
I will go with the crown on this one and definitely say Clive Barker.
Sure.
I mean, I can't, definitely an icon. And from what I read, he doesn't make too many appearances nowadays, but so I definitely have to take advantage of that. And he's probably my main draw for coming down next to the Saw reunion,
Okay.
especially Shawnee Smith, and especially Shawnee Smith. I I'm actually dying for lack of a better word, dying to tell her to her face that I loved her in Who's Harry Crumb. If you remember that from the John Candy from the 80s,
Yes.
you remember classic John Candy movies, right?
Right.
She played the sister of the daughter who she played the sister of the girl who was kidnapped. He was supposed to find. So she was with him for John Candy for probably a good three-quarters of the movie. So, I mean, it's not every day you get to go to a horror convention and someone's there who, was in a classic John Candy movie. So I have to ask her if she has any stories about him. But aside from that, definitely her from the Saw franchise, which is an all-time favorite. So,
Yeah.
Clive Barker, the Saw reunion, and of course the rest of the Cenobites. I've met Doug a couple times, but I'm of course pleased to meet him again. And probably, and of course Kevin Yeager, who's a rare appearance as well. So
Yeah.
I'll probably end up getting more than I usually do, which is the case with most folks, I think. But those are definitely on my must see.
Yes, I will. A couple of pieces of advice as we go through. Well, first, let me talk about. Yeah, I'm excited about those. Adrian Barbeau as a last minute addition.
Yes, yes,
Um,
that was a great addition. That was a
yeah,
great addition.
absolutely. Um, one of the icons of my youth. I watched Maude every week for just Adrian Barbeau alone. I'm old enough to remember that. Batman the Animated Series, her voice was just amazing in that.
She was in
So
Swamp Thing too, I think, or one of the Swamp
yes,
Things.
she
If
was.
I remember, she's
Yeah.
been yes. Uh-huh.
So I just think um, that's wonderful. I think I'm really looking forward to meeting her. As I've already talked about Steven Weber, I'm a huge Aaron Sorkin fan, and him being in Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, I'm looking forward to talking to him about that. And
Make
then,
sure you ask him. Make sure you ask Steven Weber about any Leslie Nielsen or Mel Brooks stories, because of course he was in Dracula Dead and Loving It back
yes,
in the mid '90s. So I might have to ask him about that if he has any
yeah,
fond memories, which I'm sure he does of those two
oh,
crazy characters, because I can only imagine what it's like to be you know in the same room with those two icons.
yeah.
So yeah, you definitely have to get the intel on that. I can
Yeah, I
only
totally
imagine.
agree. Yeah, so Brad Dorff is I think that's they have this huge collection of people from the Chucky franchises, which is
Hmm.
amazing. So yeah, I think it's just going to be wall-to-wall fun. So many great panels, so many chances to meet people, and not even talking about getting to the dealer's room and trying to,
Oh yeah.
yeah, she's like, okay, how much money do I have to spend?
Oh,
Uh,
it's I think 5 or almost 6 years later, I think I've just come to accept that no matter what, me or of course for maybe most folks, it just tend to go over budget. Oh, what
yes.
about another one? And I forgot. I can't believe I forgot to mention his name. Phil, and I hopefully I'll butcher his name. Phil Fondacaro.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming, which he's been in. Did you ever see Garbage Pail Kids in the '80s?
Yes.
The movie. Yes, he
Yeah.
actually. I actually ordered on eBay one of the actual Garbage Pail Kid card to have him sign because he was Greaser Greg. He was that character. So I'm actually going to have a
Oh,
Garbage Pail Kids
nice.
card signed by him, which my brothers will be super jealous because we grew up on that movie along with those
Yeah.
other obscure, flicks of that time. So yeah, he's definitely. I'm anxious to hear his panel and ask him
Yeah.
some questions about that.
I have a good friend named Tom Zoller that is a beautiful, talented artist. He's done Love and Capes, and he just finished a series on webtoons called Warning Label. And so he did two sketches for me. He did a Steven Weber as Jack from Studio 60, and then he did
Nice.
Catherine Hicks in her Star Trek um, 4 uniform at the end. And so I'm going to have them sign that. I tend to try to have people sketch caricatures of the actor, and then I have the actor sign it because it's a little more personal. And it keeps my wife happy because why do you have all this crap around the house? Do you really need that many? This way it's kind of contained.
I you have to play by the rules sometimes when
Yes,
it
you
comes to that.
do. Absolutely. So
Hmm.
we're getting close to. I want to not keep you too long, but is there any thoughts? Do you want to give someone who this is one of their first conventions? Do you have any advice you want to share to them that um, y- to help them enjoy the show?
Any thoughts? I'm trying to think back to my early, my earlier con going days. What I wish I would have known. I mean, whether you're going for the whole weekend or just one day, I would just say don't get overwhelmed. It can seem like there's a lot going on, and there is a lot going on, but just and I believe Texas Frightmare, of most cons, they release, they have a schedule release now, I think, of all the times and events that are taking place, and I believe as it gets closer, they'll have a floor plan release too of where each of the guests is. So I would just tell folks if it's their first time to maybe just plan ahead who they want to see, which events they want to go to, so they're not scrambling, in the middle of the day or in the middle of line, getting overwhelmed by everything going on, because your plans are probably changed. You'll probably see some guests you didn't think about before that you want to meet, or you'll see an event or a screening that you overheard someone in the line talking about, and you want to do that. So I would just say overall, plan in advance, but don't beat yourself up if you go off script. Allow for some flexibility, and I would say it's completely okay to do that. So plan a little bit, but don't beat yourself up if you go off key, because I think being flexible is key. That's what I would say.
I think that is very good advice. I always tell people to keep in mind to enjoy what you're doing and not focus on what you're not doing. It's very easy to get
Sure,
stuck on
definitely,
I didn't do this, I
definitely.
didn't do this, and so um, and just kind of enjoy it. Also, remember talk to the people in line if you're waiting to go to a screening or you're gonna get a signature. Take time to visit with people next to you because it will be
Yes,
very fun.
definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, that sounds really good. Are you coming in for the whole weekend?
I am. I get in town. So I'm doing what I did 2 years ago. I get in town Friday night and I leave Sunday morning at 6 a.m. So probably not just going. There's a great chance I just won't sleep on Saturday night,
All
which is
right.
okay with me.
There you
So,
go. There's something
and
to be said
back,
about that.
and it just happened to work out with the flights and everything. I figured, you know what, I'll get both nights out of it and just see what happens. And back to your point about talking to people online, I think that's a great way to, as you said, enjoy what you're doing, letting the time pass. You make new friends, you have new conversations. Actually, I'm meeting a good friend down there this year I met 2 years ago. Just as you said, we were waiting in line for, I believe, the con to open up on one of the mornings, and just able to go to some of the events together 2 years ago. And now I'm actually, of course, flying down this year, and we're gonna, take it for the whole weekend, hang out, and go to some of the events together, and yeah, just get to see some old con friends and acquaintances. So I would definitely say that's good advice as well.
Super. Well, Mike, I hope that you and I get to see each other and we can share a beverage and exchange a few stories in person. If someone wants to reach you, where's your stance on social media? Do you have
I
Twitter or go ahead?
My stance on social media is I'm not quite up to date with everyone else. I don't have a Twitter or blog, but of course, if anybody has any questions or comments, I am on Facebook, which might be, of course, there's probably a million of my names out there, but they're welcome to email me.
Yeah.
My email is, go on.
No, I was just going to make a joke as we record this. Zuckerberg was testifying today at the Capitol, so who knows? By the time this comes out, Facebook may have been gone. Uh,
May have been gone already.
yes,
We just got done
exactly.
talking about promoting Texas Frightmare, and you of course promoted this podcast on Facebook, and I'm not to be around anymore.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yes. Well, cool. Well, I can be reached at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. The show can be reached at Tour de Cons, all one word. I am on Facebook as well. Look for Jesse Jackson from Louisville, Texas. I have been hanging around the Texas Frightmare fan page and the official page, so check for us. Mike, any closing thoughts or words you want to give?
I don't believe so. Just said appreciate the time to discuss horror from a like-minded horror fan like myself, and yeah, we'll definitely have to touch base over a beverage in person, and check out the scene and have some commentary of what's going on down there once we get everything up and running.
Yeah, well, very nice. That sounds
So
perfect. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you once again, Texas Frightmare Weekend, May 4th, 5th, and 6th at DFW. Let us know if you're going because we're looking forward to seeing you. For now, take care. Remember to turn on the nightlight, and we'll talk to you soon.